working. Okay, I guess it's working. Okay, hi. Okay, so I've had a hair change colour because I've got to get rid of the blue for the moment. We've got a general election coming, and I thought, well, okay, this is the time. It's mega important to get a video in. I'm so excited. I've had somebody on the door already with my poster to go in the window, and I drove past this morning and I saw somebody's got this massive Labour banner outside their whole front of their garden, and I thought, yes, brilliant. Okay, so we're really, I think, onto a winner here, because remember what the polls were like last time, and if we apply that to how they are now, I think we really have got a massive chance of winning. People were also conned by that last time, and they realised, well, you know, perhaps we should have voted Labour. Those people will vote Labour this time. I've got a son who's now turned 18, so he will be voting Labour, as well as my rest of my family. So yes, can't wait. Really, I want to talk a bit more seriously, though, about this whole capitalist system, and it's so perverse at the moment. It blames those that are least to blame for its failures. Those that are claiming benefits are told that they don't pay their taxes, so they deserve nothing. But every penny they get, it goes in from hand to mouth. As I've said before in many of my videos, their money goes straight back into the economy, where they pay VAT. So they do pay taxes. Everybody pays taxes. You're getting this. Every single person pays their taxes. So when they say that, you know, oh, these people are getting handouts for nothing, we're all paying for these things. We're all paying for the NHS. None of us want to see people dying on our streets or anything, do they? So, you know, we need this net, which seems to have been whipped away from so many people just lately. And what is so perverse is that these big corporations that the Tory governments allow to have massive tax breaks on, it's not the poorest depleting the economy. All of that money that we pay VAT then goes back into the corporations. So the richest gain from taxes but pay nothing under the Tories themselves. And those people are the richest and not the disabled and the elderly and the unemployed. On day one of the general election, it's unbelievable that we're actually fighting against somebody as, I can't even think of the right word, incompetent as Boris Johnson. And if he's the best that they've got, then, you know, it's a sad world that we're living in. We have got a brilliant leader and he's fantastic. So day one of the general election campaign from the Tories, what have we got? They attract criticism by releasing a needlessly doctored video of Keir Starmer, suppressed a video on the Russian interference in the 2016 referendum, abandoned promises to give Parliament votes on the transition period. They go into hiding when a report reveals that, against the promise of constructing 200,000, the Tories have built a perfect zero houses. Rees-Mogg's insults on Grenfell, on the people that had died and how that they were stupid. James Cleverly, empty chair on Sky for being scared to being interviewed, despite being on the Studio 7. In the studio rather. 7, government forced to withdraw misleading ads in the universal credits. Governments forced to abandon using Treasury civil servants to rubbish Labour's economic plans. 9, Welsh secretary resigns over the scandal that he tried to pretend he knew nothing about the scandals. Boris finally showing Tory compassion by kickstarting the campaign with a defence of the obscenity of wealth of the wealthy. Then, without any irony, Boris tells us he'll avoid a horror show if we vote for him. Now, while we've all been going through austerity for the last 10 years, the Tories have tripled the national debt. They can't even afford the interest, and this country is morally bankrupt because the Tories enable this. And though they love to point the finger elsewhere, it's nothing to do with Corbyn. Every time we see an argument of Boris, it's, oh, well, if you look at Corbyn, it's pointing at something else completely different rather than answering any of the questions that he's asked. John McDonnell has used his first major speech of the election campaign to promise an irreversible shift in the centre of gravity in politics, decision-making and investment from London to the north. Labour will commit at least £100 billion to replace, upgrade and expand our schools, our hospitals, our care homes and council houses to address the massive inadequacies, public health in England pre-75 years mortality map, November 2019. The health of people in the north is measurably worse than the national average in measures. Heart disease is not caused by statin deficiency at all. Stroke is not caused by deficiency of hypertensive agents. I've emphasised not just the causes of health inadequacies, behaviours, biological risk factors, but the cause of the causes. The causes of the cause reside in the social and economic arrangements of society and social detriments of health, as well as inadequacies. When compared nationally, inadequacies that exist within the north itself. A boy living in the poorest part of the region can expect to live 17 years fewer than a boy living in most of the affluent part of the south of England. Those in the north of England are great in innovation and research and entrepreneurship, and Jeremy Corbyn wants to harness that potential. He wants to put a nationalised bank in the north. He wants to even out this imbalance that's happened, and we should all want that, because when we get on the trains, I live in the south, and when I get on the train, it's jam-packed with people. It's impossible to just go from one side of the town to the other side. I have to leave for my children to pick my children up from school at 2:30, knowing that I'm not going to get to the other side of Medway before, to pick him up in time. It's absolutely horrendous. And now Labour is rising to the challenge, and the Labour Party has a vision for our health, the social system, under the visionary leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell. Labour plans to break up the Treasury and dissolve some of its powers from London to the north. And it's not just about spending more, it's about how it's spent. With decision-making devolved down to local communities, Labour will carve out part of our National Transformation Fund for a total transformation fund in each of England's regions, with funding for the devolved governments as well. And that money will be ring-fenced for infrastructure projects decided and developed at a local level, with decisions made transparently and democratically in each region about how their fund is allocated. And that's so important, because we know that funding has been misused. It's been given but hasn't been used on the things that it should have done. We've seen children being wrongfully taken from parents. The social system itself is absolutely at breaking point. There's not enough social workers. There's not enough. It's not social workers we need family workers. We need people in the families actually helping to keep families together. It's all falling apart right now, and the result of that is the thousands of children now being removed, put into foster placement or into other care placements. And who pays for that? The taxpayer. There's so much money that's being misspent where they could be helping these things to stay together and to come together and to work together. And I know definitely that the Labour Party has a lot of plans for that area and to help families being able to stay together. Absolutely. Regional offices of government departments overseas by a board of the local county and city council leaders will be publicly accountable to open meetings of local councillors, trade unions and business representatives. All of this is going to hold these people accountable. They will be supported by a National Transformation Fund of the Treasury, the powerful new section of the Treasury that the Labour will base in the North, and the Treasury ministerial meetings under John McDonnell will not be confined to London as they have been under the Tories. Labour, via the Transformation Fund, will address inadequacies in general and health inadequacies in particular. Give every child the best start in life. That's what we need to see happen. If we don't invest in the children and if we don't invest in families, then what's going to happen? All of these children that have been in care are going to come out of care, never actually been able to cope with the world. They've had breakdowns of their families. They've had nobody to help and support that family to stay together. Then they go on to have children of their own and they repeat these problems over and over again. And also I'm very aware of, children that have been in care, how social services do target those families as well. So it's just going to be an ongoing problem unless they throw some money at that right now. They need to create fair employment and good work for all, ensure healthy standards of living for all, create and develop healthy and sustainable places and communities, strengthen the role and the impact of ill health prevention. The Conservatives have allowed these inadequacies not just to continue, but to burden the detriment of people in the whole of the country. Labour will reduce and eliminate this unfairness from the very start of its tenure in government. So you're taught by your newspapers, even by your parents perhaps, even by grandparents who have been reading their Daily Mail, as my stepfather, I know, is very elderly, is 85 years old, and he has always read the Daily Mail. And when I go to see him, all I hear is about how, Corbyn has done this, Corbyn has done that, because he's read it in the paper. You have been taught that socialism is the next step to communism, but is this really true? Actually, socialism has throughout history aided the next step in human evolution. In Victorian times, it was when every home was installed with a toilet that many sicknesses came to an end and more sanitary conditions came about. After the war ended and things became more prosperous, washing machines became essential items in every home, and today Social Security does provide for these council tenants. Now, at the age of technology, we're about to take another massive step forward again, where everyone will be entitled to be connected to the World Wide Web, where human beings can connect to others and learn other people's faiths and others' understanding of the world. Because the whole problem with the way we're taught is they over there are our enemies, we're the good guys. It's like the cowboys and Indians. We now see something very different. The cowboys were the heroes, the Indians the baddies. But when you actually see the history of it, how the Indians, the Native American Indians, were horrifically treated when we imposed, or a Western ideal was imposed upon these people, and there was genocide, mass genocide, and this still continues today. We know in the world that this continues today. So in this day and age of technology, we need to also be able to open up dialogue with those people. And I know that I can remember first going on the internet, I did have this view of different types of people, and those views I know were imposed upon me by my parents' views, my grandparents' views. Those were the bad guys. Our newspapers showed us these bad guys bombing here, bombing there. without actually knowing the cause or without actually speaking to the human beings. And usually, when you speak to somebody and you learn about their fight and their reason behind something, I'm not in any way condoning the fact that bombing is correct in any way whatsoever. And I know that Jeremy Corbyn doesn't either. He has condemned bombing. It's not the way to deal with things. If we can open dialogue with people from other countries, with different faiths, with different ideas, then we might come to some agreement. And I totally and completely understand where Jeremy Corbyn comes from with that. And, and I know that, in saying all of this, I too will be labelled all of these terrible things that he is, but it is absolute nonsense. Each term where socialism has come to power, Britain has rejoined the human race, whilst each term where capitalist rule has taken over, it has held the country back. Even under Tony Blair, Britain has been held back in terms of knowledge and accessing their true potential in that timeline, because they need to teach us that we are below them. We're not, they don't work for us, we work for them. We have to work, or we have to do this or do that, or else you don't get this. Now, I know that we're all paying in. All of us pay in, and this is something that people would tend to forget. We're all paying in. Every time you buy something, you are paying tax. But hoarding money becomes the norm with the Tories. It became the norm with Tony Blair, with his friendships with the mega rich. It continues today. It's all about money, where hoarding money becomes normal, where people are taught that through their brainwashing media and the newspaper that it's necessary to take a country and to make it great, but on a pile of wealth. And they teach you that it can only be done on a pile of wealth. And then that only the wealthy can be powerful, and only wealthy countries can have power. This is what we are taught. Yet, who do the wealthy turn to when they can't agree to policies to the point where it results in war? They rely on the people that they have pushed down to fight their fight for them. Those that have been brainwashed through the media and newspapers to believe that they can achieve power without money all of a sudden if they fight for their cause and their argument and for their country. War begins in the minds of men, in the minds of wealthy men and women, and many less well off have died for those who have ensured that they know their place and fight when they're told to fight, and stay quiet when they're told to stay quiet. And then when one brave soldier speaks up, he's imprisoned and made an example of. And we've had a history of all of this happening, just as Nelson Mandela, and now we have Julian Assange. Whilst what happens to Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning? It's meant to intimidate us and to frighten us into silence. By defending Julian Assange, we defend our most sacred rights. We've got to not be afraid. We've got to realise our own true potential is way above anything that they teach us. And the deep state has embarked on ruthless take no prisoners, all-out assault on truth tellers, and that's a fact. We can see it happening here right now in our lifetime and in history repeatedly. When is it going to stop? We need to be the change. It's time to recognise that socialism was never your enemy. It is not a step towards communism, as they try to teach you. It's not a step towards North Korea, but a step towards your freedom to grow and stand up and shout and be the truest you that you can be, and to find your truest potential, because our potential lies in what we're good at, in our talents. And generally, our talents are pushed down in education, in schools, where we're stuck in a classroom with 40-odd children, all battling for a teacher's attention, and ultimately none of us are learning. The cleverest are pushed down, and the least, those that perhaps have talent elsewhere. They often have talent somewhere else, but they're not so good at a subject, and they fall through the net. Now it's time for talent, for love, for care, for peace. And if we don't want that in the world, then what the hell are we doing? We just want to continue these battles, these wars, see our children dying and send them off to war. Why? What purpose is this to continue the same thing, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? Everyone dies in war, no one wins. So please, please, everybody, I beg you, have a think about what I've said here, especially about taxation. The people that, don't go to work or are incapacitated, disabled, elderly, all of them have paid tax. Every item that they buy, they pay tax on. And remember where those taxes go: straight into the pockets of the corporations that don't pay tax. And who carries the burden of that ultimately? If they're not paying the tax, it is the ordinary worker that is carrying the full taxation burden. So don't go thinking that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party is your enemy. If you're a worker, if you pay your taxes, I pay taxes, then he's not your enemy. He's actually pushing the burden to the people that can afford it even more than you can afford it. So I'll leave it there. I'll leave you to think, and please, please vote Labour, because it is the best decision. I'm absolutely certain it's the best decision any of us will ever make, because this is big change. Okay, love to all. Thank you. Bye for now.